You're listening to the Fooled by the Root podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Heidi Marble. This is the second episode with Chilean Adoptees Worldwide organization. The first episode, one of the founders, Maria, told her heart-wrenching story about her illegal adoption. In this episode, we have all three founders joining together to talk more about the global issues surrounding adoption, to include illegal adoptions. They, of course, have a deep passion for the over 10,000 Chilean adoptees that were adopted illegally. They also want very much to help all adoptees' voices be heard. It is really important that we open our mind and our eyes and our heart to the way that adoption is taking place all over the world. It gives us all a better understanding. These two episodes together are very powerful and very important. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Heidi Marble. I am really happy to have Chilean Adoptees Worldwide for our second episode. Beautiful Maria shared her story during the first episode, which hopefully you've already heard. She is going to continue her story, and then Alejandro and Jessica, who are also founders of PA, will then jump in and tell you more about their organization and the important work that they are doing. Hello, I'm so glad you guys are here.
Thank you for inviting us.
And Maria, I'd love it if you would start where you left off and we can finish up that part of the story, and then we can speak with Jessica and Alejandro too.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you for having me here again. And it would be obviously delightful to continue to tell my story. So we left it off of me coming to Sweden and entering this house, which was going to be my new home, which was in Helsingborg, Sweden. And this was 16th of January, 1984. From here on, in a short, briefly description, I obviously started school, which was very strange. I started a school where it was meant for foreigners who were not able to speak the language. So it was for me then to learn Swedish. And I can remember that the first few months, my mother was at home staying with me because she couldn't speak the language. I couldn't speak Swedish. So we were trying to help each other by reading dictionaries. Little could I read, and certainly not the Swedish language. After half a year, I was able to enter another sort of local school where I started with a lot of other children in a place called Ringstopskolan, which is also in Helsingborg. And I suppose to a certain point, it was quite nice to be in this class till I started group 3. And I got a teacher called Ingegerd. And this teacher did not like me. She absolutely despised me in every possible way. And I can remember that we've been having a break, and everybody was going into the classroom, and our class was a mixed kind of children, of the sense that we had 3 children that had a specific handicap, physical handicap that were very smart. The physical handicap, there was a girl who was from India, Helena, I can remember. And anyway, so it was a complex class, but there we were, and we were about to enter the class. And I said something, and I think I needed to actually go to the toilet. I was desperate to go to the toilet, so she refused. And I said, I really need to go to the toilet. And she ended up giving me a big fat slap of my face.
What?
Without any reason, and told me literally how much she absolutely disliked me. And the whole class stood there totally looking. And I had this big red hand mark in my face where I started to cry. And the director's office was just around the corner. So they came along, and I was it. I was just taken away from this teacher. They phoned my mother, my Swedish mother. She came instantly, and that was it. They said my mother just refused for me to go to class or that school ever again. So I moved to a different school called St. Jürgen School, which was in the more city center of Helsingborg. And that's when life turned out to be really good. I got fantastic classmates and I developed the way I should have done. And life went on, obviously. But then there came a point when I was 13, and through these years, I kept constantly looking myself into the mirror, wondering who I was, asking my mother, where is my mother? How are my sisters? And long story short, we did return back to Chile when I was 13, where I did reconnect with my biological mother and my sisters and our entire journey. Then after that journey, life for me became very different because I wasn't more the same girl I was when I left. My mother absolutely recognized me, but yeah, we couldn't speak to each other. But still, I was blessed to have this connection. And through the years, when internet came along, I was able to connect with my sisters via Facebook. And until today, I have connections with them. But there's always been this question to why were you adopted? And why was I not adopted? And it's something I'd never be able to answer. When I was, during this time, I also moved to England, where I met my husband. And then in 2000, we actually went to Chile for a month. And that's where he got to meet my biological mother. He got to meet all my sisters. And we even actually met the man who had violated me when I was 6. We also met him. I had a very confrontational talk with him. And that was one thing that me and my sisters told her, that if you leave this man or don't stay with him, we will forgive you for whatever happened. But little did we know and understand what really had happened. And put an ultimatum that we desperately want our mother back, but not under these conditions. Now, long story short, she did finally leave him. And then my grandmother passed away. So then I had another trip down to Chile, where I got to know more the family connections. And it was confirmed that I am who I am today, Maria Angelica. And then we found out that we had family photos in the albums. And more my memories started to come back. So I was able to connect with my cousins, with whom I had all these memories with. And fast forward and then to where we are today, I finally connected with a young guy at the time called Alejandro. I was introduced to him via a connection we had at the time. And quite honestly, I wasn't even interested in the adoption because as far as I knew my story. I knew everything that needed to be known. And Alejandro was living in Chile at the time. And it was 25th of September, 2018. I was connected to him. And little could I care about who he was. But there was this persistent, no, you had to connect with him because he was adopted to the Netherlands. And yeah, that's why I like to introduce my colleagues with whom I'm working today with. And for me, it's really important to highlight that before even I came to the picture, Jessica and Alejandro had already known each other for quite some few years. So I would like to invite you guys to the conversation. And I would like you to actually start from the point where you got to know each other and how Chilean Adoptees Worldwide came to be.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story, of course, how things came all of a sudden into elements. It's many times how I explain it is because elements come together, and there's a reason for that. Some things just have to happen. And I was living in Chile since 2014, basically to find out everything that had to do with my adoption and my story, because there is a difference in growing up and understanding from very little that one was adopted because the mother, in this case my mother, would not have sufficient economical resources to have me at her side and grow me up. And then later being 30 years of age and that was 13 years later after I known my mother for the first time, because then I was only 17. But at that time we couldn't speak with each other because I didn't speak any Spanish. So I wanted to go back to Chile always to learn the language and to learn my country, culture, but most of all my family, which I found back in 1997. But the reason I went back to Chile in 2014 is simply because in 2010, I got to understand that there is a difference between voluntarily given away and then understanding finally the version of my mother is that she did not voluntarily give me away, but there was a Dutch nun who declared me dead towards my mother and got me out of the country. And that is such a situation in my life. And I can never, ever explain it in a different way than this. I mean, how can you explain this? But I try to explain this like you fall down from 10 stories high on the floor and you lose all your teeth. The rest is totally intact, but you lose your teeth, you see them laying there in front of you, you try to put it back, it will never be the same again. The person that you thought you were, you are not. Your identity goes to the garbage and you have to start from point zero. You start from point zero usually when you're born. But this is when you're 30 years of age and you understand this, it's not even like a rebirth. Maybe then today you can think, yes, it was, but at that moment you just feel damaged and really lied to, and everything started to make sense of all those lies, of all those years. Because understanding what my mother told me, that I'd never left her voluntarily, but the real story behind it, those are emotions that someone cannot fake. That's impossible. And I also have no reason to believe why she would, because it would just not fit in the whole situation, the whole setting of how she told me about it. And that was for me the reason to go to Chile. In 2014, I made a step. I went there with my my two children and the mother of my two children. And it was a very interesting time, but also a very difficult time because I was just starting to learn the language. I threw myself really in all the depth of everything that depth can be, and try to make a living with all the difficulties of, for example, having a double identity, because our adoption was only spoken out by the judge in the countries where we went to, but not in the country where we were born. Were never legalized back. But little did I know. So I never was able to register my children under my name and never were therefore able to have the benefits that exist for Chilean citizens because they were not recognized under my name. So I was just like one Chilean person living in a house trying to take care of 3 other people. And that was really, really challenging. But during the time, I was also very much busy with looking into my adoption because I wanted to know who is involved, who was involved, why did this happen, and who was behind it? How came it so extremely different from one thing that is mentioned in the official documents, signed by a judge, signed by a notary, and the other side, the story of my mother, which is totally opposite. It's not even close to being opposite. It's even far away from that. So just before I left to Chile in 2013, something like that, 2014, I got to understand that there was this group of people in Belgium, and they had some people in this group also from the Netherlands. And this is actually where I got to understand of of many more adoptees from Chile, and one of them was Jessica. So the paths of us have already crossed. And when I was living in Chile, for reasons that we were believing in, we kept in contact, and we were thinking, I think it was in 2015 or something, if I'm not mistaken, we were thinking about doing something for these people who were adopted in Belgium and in the Netherlands, and make something to help them. For example, help them find their families, because there were many people who were looking. I already found out how to look, how to search, because it's quite an open system in Chile today. Luckily, still, because it helps a lot. And we were already like thinking about how are we going to deal then with documents that people send us, we should have websites. And so we did actually claim a domain at a certain point, which is
Right.
still claimed. It's called like adoptado.cl. So it was basically the very first idea to do something more for a bigger group of people adopted from Chile. And little did we know, but living in Chile also got me to understand that there was already a public opinion in a changing mode in Chile because of the Dutch nun that got me out of the country, together with 120 other Chilean adoptees that ended up in the Netherlands, was being a little documentary, like 3 times, like 15 minutes, telling about what she did actually, what was behind her, and how she, like a documentary. And it was in 2013 that it came on television. So the public opinion was already changing. Getting all these mothers to testify, would put the testimonies out, like, yeah, she is the person that said to me that my child was dead, and then years later she comes back with my child, and it's exactly it's the same to my story. So it's not something that standing on itself, it's the story of many more people. So that is when it started to make sense. Not sense, because declaring someone dead, how can it make sense? But it started to get into a balance, as in, okay, this is more behind it. And then in 2015, I got into a situation when it was like, okay, now it is important to really get into the news, into the, like, on the noticias, during prime time in Chile, where I told about my story, that I was grew up in the Netherlands. My mother was even on the same interview. She was interviewed at her home. I was also interviewed at my home. And it came to the news. And then all of a sudden, before I knew it, it helped a lot to get more awareness, not, well, through my story perhaps, but not because of me so much, but basically there were many more mothers coming to the news. And that is also when 3 other documentaries about other social assistant came to the light. And that was about a social assistant that is responsible for children who went to Sweden. So the whole public opinion changed. After my appearance on television, I was interviewed by a historiadora, like a history professor. And she interviewed me, she wrote an article, and all of a sudden, the whole setting in Chile changed towards those people who were screaming and shouting, actually, like, this needs to be investigated, and it got to be investigated. So in 2018, February, that is when an investigation judge who is appointed by the Supreme Court in Chile to do an investigation specifically, and he started with an amount of 500 irregular adoptions. And the fact that there is an investigation judge appointed by the Supreme Court investigating in 500, that means that this is like recognized now, that this did really happen in Chile. With that, I had this idea, like, this needs to go into the world. And my Spanish was then on such a level that at the 25th of September, how she said, I spoke with her. I already spoke with her. And all of a sudden there was this idea to put it in the website.
Can I just add something to that? Because for me, to adding to this story, I think has quite a lot of significance, because at the time I did not know either Jessica or Alejandro, but this news about a Swedish social worker called Anna Maria Emgren was connected to me by some Swedish friends, Chilean Swedish friends, who came to the Netherlands to visit me. And they came down because they do that on a regular basis. And basically the first thing to say, have you heard about the legal Chilean adoptions? I was like, no, what are you on about? I don't understand. And they said, right, tonight there's going to be a second part of this series, this documentary coming out in Chile. Let's watch it together. So Juan, who is my best friend, I know him since he was very young, together with his wife, we sat there in the living room, and up came live documentary. This was not the second about this woman, and also another socialist historian, Esmeralda Quezada. So I sat there totally flabbergasted, because this was actually people I knew, people I remembered from my adoption process.
Wow.
So everything I had really there when I was a little girl, all of a sudden was being confirmed on national television in Chile. So I just sat there totally flabbergasted, not understanding what was going on. And what Juan and I did, we instantly started to look in my adoption papers again to see, but what does it say, what is stated? And as I was going through my adoption papers, I did find a private letter from Esmeralda Quezada to Ana Maria Emgren, but also talking about another child who was being adopted to Sweden. So in my world, I was like, oh my gosh, but that might be my brother. That could be my brother. So in December 2017, I then connected with this guy. Now he got really upset and like, how do you know my name? And how did you find me? And yeah, he became really threatful. Wow. And I was like, but I have you in my adoption documents. Now that didn't turn out to be a very good match. I thought, right, let's the equation. And then in January, the headlines hit it also Sweden. So now I was in a different kind of turmoil. Okay, so my whole youth that I had remembered, like I have explained earlier, wasn't adding up anymore. So me contacted the family I knew who had adopted. And basically they were telling me, you have to be quiet about this. You can't tell anybody. And I was like, what? So now I was being threatened by people who knew this lady, Ana Maria Emgren, and other connections that had to be quiet. Anyway, it came out in the Swedish news. There was 3 or 4 documentaries about it. And to be quite truthful, my world totally crashed in. And what do I mean we crashed in? That everything had sensed through my entire life was not the same anymore, because everything I knew was getting an answer. And in addition, the people who I've been growing up with, the people who I was very close connected with, were threatening me, were trying to keep me quiet for something I still didn't understand. So I had a burnout. I really had a burnout because of many different factors. First, my Chilean mother had passed away. Then my Swedish mother passed away. And various kind of circumstances. And then came the whole adoption aspect, for which I did not even expect. I wasn't even looking for it, but all of a sudden it was there. And I really needed to take time out. I even went to a psychologist. And luckily, I got a very good psychologist in the Netherlands who allowed me to explain what I had lived. And for me, it became very physical in the sense that I started to grow a little bump here on my hand, for which I actually been operated. And we figured out that I really need, the first thing she told me, you be living in a survival mode since you were 6. So from the day you were raped until today, you be living in survival mode. Now, anybody knows that living in a survival mode is not good for anybody.
It's not good. It's tiring.
It's tiring. And obviously, chain of events in life also adds to the commotions of feelings. So when this news hit headlines, my whole world crashed in the sense of that I wasn't just Maria, and now I was also Maria Angelica. Angelica, the little girl whose life had totally been turned up into pieces. So when I was connected to Alejandro, I was generally really done with the whole adoption. I thought, okay, I cannot have it worse. I saw the first news in 2017, and then it came into the headlines in Sweden. And then the people who knew this woman, Ana Maria Emgren, were threatening me and telling me to keep quiet. One of my family members really hurt me to the point that she was telling me to stop. And yeah, she was the one to threaten me. And how could it be so irresponsible? And what was I doing? And how could I go to the news? And I was like, but I'm not the one who's going to the news. This is the news coming out. Yeah. So you can't blame me. I also contacted the children who came to this family. So Anna Maria Emgren had a sister, and this sister had 3 children. And those children I should been growing up with. And it turns out these were one of the first children who actually came to Sweden. So I contacted the children and said, look, guys, is this the auntie that I know, your auntie? And it came to a shock for them to understand that it becoming headlines all over the place. Mm-hmm. So what I also did, in addition to this, I actually even contacted Alejandro Quezada because I had all these memories from her and living with her and so forth. So everybody I was contacted said, yeah, it's correct, but be quiet about it. Don't tell anybody about it. So I was getting conflicting messages. So I was just gaining my energy. I was getting fit. I was like, okay, this is good. I know now there's nothing more to be added. And then
there we go back again, as in,
Yeah.
this was this idea of having people informed. And because I spoke the language at that moment quite well, there was this point that I had all this news of all this, like these 500 adoptions that were investigating to the Netherlands, to Belgium, to Germany, to the United States, and to Sweden. That was just, people have to know. And I was in a meeting with this investigation judge because I wanted to know all the details that were to be found out. Understanding that also this article that this history professor wrote, which is like a little booklet, I found that is being used as one of the guidelines by that investigation team in order to get an understanding of how in the past the system works, and how due to the military regime people were in fear and actually didn't have a voice, and how it was then so easy. And understanding that 1982 was the highlight, like the high level of the amount of children that left the country, which were around 800. And it was like I earlier mentioned, like the elements that came together when we were there actually, it was the idea was there to have a name. And I said, okay, the name I think should be Chilean Adoptees Worldwide. And the other person who is not working with us anymore said like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then it was basically like, yeah, but who of us two is going to do that? She was having she was also very busy. And I had this idea, yeah, but we cannot wait. So basically that's when I created not only the website, but also bought the domain, made the Facebook, made an Instagram, made a Twitter. So yes, guilty. But it's something that you cannot do yourself. It's too much. You would simply just break down. So it was quite, because of that flow of information, it was quite normal for me to do that with the people who were actually in the same type of flow, not knowing any of the background of her. But we got to that point quite rather fast, because we had very long conversation, but also with Jessica. Yeah. And yeah, I think
and we met. So then I was introduced to you, and we spoke of Facebook or WhatsApp, I think. And then I was actually, so now we connect on the 25th of September 2018. And around the 16th of October, I was actually going back home to England with my children. And I said to Jessica, let's meet up because I will pass that way. So we met by the seaside, right, in Belgium. And it was like having a blind date.
Yeah, for me also, it was the first contact with somebody out of my country, a Chilean adoptee out of my country. So I was really curious to meet somebody else. So I took my adoption papers with me just to take through with Angelica. So yeah. And this time, before I met you, I connected already with Alejandro, because for me it was really recent that I yeah, I'm busy with the adoptee world. So in 2017, I start to figure out what went wrong with my adoption papers. So my adoption mother passed away in 2016. So after this moment, I was really trying to start keeping my papers true and searching for names and connections. So I made connections with a lot of Chilean people. I just connected with groups in Chile and just asking questions about the name of my mother, because her name was written in my papers. So I asked people, yeah, do you know this lady? Do you know her? Do you know her? I want to desperately find her. So I make connections everywhere. So I connected in a group in Holland where Alejandro was in, and Angelica. So then I finally found my mother, and she was telling me, yeah, your adoption was not meant to be. You were stolen from the hospital. I said, what? No, cannot be possible. I was so suspicious. I said, no, that cannot be true. My parents would told me, they would told me. My adoption parents were very open. They were very friendly, kindly people. Yeah, they would know that if I was stolen, and no, that cannot be true. So I was really suspicious, and I just blamed my mother to say, yeah, she's trying to figure something out just to recover the adoption and just give her a pretty face and just give the story a beautiful end, and beautiful in her way, just just to find things out, and say no, that cannot be true. So I connected in these groups of adoptees everywhere, and I heard stories from people here in Belgium, heard stories from people in Holland, really same stories, and say, wow, no, cannot be true. And then I just did my research on the internet and check out the history of Chile, check out the time with Pinochet, what was going on, connected with 20, 30, 40, 50 other adoptees with the similar stories, and say, wow, what is this? It was just like a movie. So, wow, where I'm in now. So I was talking with Alejandro, and he explained some stuff where he was actually be doing with. He was busy with the investigation. He was telling me about the PDI. I never heard before. I was, what? PDI? What the hell is that? So he gave me a lot of information. Say, wow, what is this? So it's really, really, really new to me. So I was happy just to hear the same story, and just I could refer to other people that I was not the only one with a crazy cowboy story. Say, wow. I really was shocked. I was really shocked. And also I was another way, I was happy just to understand that people were in the same similar situation. So at the time, Alejandro was in Chile, and I was telling him I found my mother and my brother. So I told him, I will come to Chile because my story is really weird. And I say, no, that's things going on in adoption world with Chilean adoptees. I come to Chile, I gonna meet my mother, and I want you to be there. So he was in Chile because I don't spoke any of Spanish. It was really my Flemish and English a little bit, but I could not survive on this language. So I met also Angelica from the same group in Facebook from Holland, and so we connected, and we were at
So we actually met first. We had our blind date, and we
he was in Chile.
Yeah. So we had our blind date then, and we went through our adoption papers. We were finding out that we had literally the same kind of information, but they're still different.
Wow.
And in addition, it turned out we were from the same area
of
Chile. So that made it like, well, we're from the same area, okay, and she came here. So those elements then led to all of us talking, okay, this has to come out. And that's when you, on the 24th of October 2018, said, okay, let's do a website, let's do this, let's do that. And that's...
But then that is when the website was actually ready. It was filled, it was that had information, there was a story on there. And basically the 24th of October was the launch, as in, okay, now we're going to release the website into the world. And there was already a group for the people. And we already connected with, I think, 25 people at the moment who were in there, most of them from Belgium, from the other Belgium group. And it was also said, like, you know, this is not going to be like, well, we wave little flags of Chile. No, this is about this going into the investigation that goes on. This is a total different thing. Where we cover like what's coming out in the news. But yeah, the 24th of October is basically the year that, or the date that we fixed as like, this is the starting date.
Born.
And this is,
that's
like,
where we were born,
yeah,
Chilean
absolutely.
Adoptees Worldwide.
Yeah.
And then you, because you were so into the whole dynamic of what was happening in Chile, we also found out it was important that we translated it, because something we soon realized, but how are people going to know what's going on? Because everything was in Spanish. So before I knew it, I got a very quick type course on how
course in WordPress website.
And then before you knew it, you were sitting in the Senate. And there was like live documentaries coming out, and me typing, putting things onto the website
and publishing it, and again and again and again.
Yeah.
Like it was a very intense day when there was this. That was the 29th of November, 27th of November, 2018. When there was already this criminal investigation on the course, but there was also this idea that the criminal investigation looks at the crime, and the crime that we talk about, that they actually investigate in Chile, is the kidnapping of children, sustracción de menores, subtraction of children. That is the crime that's being investigated. And next to that, all these adoptees with double identities, because the adoptions that were like spoken out by a judge in the destination country, but were never legalized in the country of origin, in our case, Chile, that is something else. And that is an irregularity. It isn't, and therefore, in the Chamber of Deputies in Chile, on the 27th of November, there was a vote in order to set up a commission. And before that vote came to be there, a situation going on that you have to work for that, so that you have to have people within politics, you need to have them on your side, because they can help you in order to make such a vote happen and set up a commission. So I remember that I had to go to the Chamber of Deputies, to a special commission of family rights. All of a sudden, I was sitting there, and my story was just being put like a testimony in front of all these politicians. And nervous as I was, I kept it basically to my story, but there was this thing that I mentioned, like, this is only one story that you hear, because the amount of people that I already know about, and knowing now that there's so many other adoptees, and there's now an investigation that's already on course. This is not only my story, this is the story of so many others.
By now, so in January 2018, we were talking about 500 children. Now in November, they were talking about more than 10,000 children.
Yeah, I read that on your website description. And when you think about the amount of people and all of the people affected around that, it's just shocking that the world doesn't know. And I'm so grateful to you guys for sharing this with the world, because issues surrounding adoption are a global issue. And I think people are under the impression that adoption is saving a child. And there's so many layers that people just don't understand. And it is so brave of all of you to do this work as you're healing your own lives and rebuilding yourself, Alejandro. I love that visual you gave, because that explains how it feels when you find out your truth. And you just crash into that truth, and the fact that you guys are stepping outside of your own personal pain to create a global platform to help people is incredible. And as we get down to the last 10 minutes of our interview, I'd really like to know what you guys want to see happen. Is there any progress, tell me a little bit about how we as an adoptee world, domestic adoptees, people that are not Chilean, I think we all need to support and help each other.
Yeah. Actually, the last few weeks, there is some new development in Belgium. So in my own country, we went to the Chamber of Deputies, and we're working with other adoptees from Belgium, not specific Chilean, but also from Guatemala, Sri Lanka, India, different countries here in our own proper little country. So we went to the government just to ask to have an investigation commission, so that they will check what there went wrong in our documents. So that is really actual now. So we came on the news with our organization here in our land, just to do my story and just asking for help to the government, just to recognize that some illegal stuff happened. So that's really important. And just
Right.
if they recognize, just it's for the future. For me personally, it's really important that the future is better. The children of today who are adopted cannot have the same problems tomorrow. They must be aware of this, the government, that it must change. It really must change, not going the way it went from us. So children will have questions. If they are older, they will growing up, they will have the same questions. Where I come from, who are my parents? Do I look like my parents? So it must be really, really being on a local scale. Just it's in fact so much your personality. They take you from another country to another country. They think not about the
welfare.
The consequences.
Also psychological consequences.
It's huge.
I connect with my family, but I need to teach myself some Chilean Spanish. So even after a few years, it's hard. So they took the language, they took the culture, they took the identity. So it cannot be like this. If there are problems with mother and situations, they need to figure it out in their own country. So the future is so important for me.
Thank you for sharing that, Jessica, because I feel like even I'm a domestic adoptee, and the pain that I have felt, and I didn't lose my country and I didn't lose my culture, and those layers, and I wasn't stolen. And you add all those complicated traumas to this. And the fact that you guys are able to come together, and I know we talked about, I'm obsessed with this word, chispa, the spark that you guys talked about. I really want to share that with our audience. I feel such a spark from all of you in your organization, that you are fueled by passion to make this better for the next generation of adoptees, because I do believe that a lot of this nonsense is still going on around the world. Am I wrong? Like there's a lot of illegal stuff still occurring.
And that's the one thing that we live in a society, or in the Western society, let me put it this way, in the Western society, it's always to do good for the, to do better for the better good, right?
Yes.
But is that really so much better? Are we so much superior to do better? Or who do we think we are? Who are we to pull people out of the roots and not understand the consequences that come with that? Well, we three believe that, okay, we can't change our past, but we do believe it is highly important to inform other adoptees. Of course, we will always start with our country, or the adoptees from Chile, based on the information that's coming out, because that's something that fails our country. Do not speak any other language, the Chilean Spanish. And we feel it's not our responsibility, but we're taking that responsibility on to explain to other adoptees what is happening in the country, because Chile will not reach out to us, but we're going to turn that page around. So we're explaining to people, this is what's happening, this is your rights, this is what you're entitled to, this is what happened. Don't believe what is stated in your documents, because the story might be different. We can now confirm we have irregularities, and we can now confirm that they're talking even now about more than 20,000 children. That means there's 20,000 mothers who somehow have been violated on their human rights, and they live in a society where they don't actually speak about what has happened. So our mission is to create awareness, and awareness can be created on so many different levels. So the first awareness we are looking into is to recognize to what has happened in Chile. The second awareness we're aiming for is to give the awareness to the mothers who lost the children due to a dictatorship or due to circumstances they were not able to because of their education. Third awareness is making people understand that our adopted parents did not always know that we became part of what we would call today child trafficking, because they intended to do something good. They were taken advantage of. So we have 3 people who were used by the higher society. Now, those people who had us adopted were thinking that, oh, these poor little children we're going to save from being so poor, did not realize that we one day were going to grow up and we were going to have questions. And we are now the grown-ups, and we do have questions. Now, these questions we're throwing back to our society. Was this really a sensible thing to do? Because now we know our human rights. And for instance, if I then refer to Chile, they have a little bit difficulties with human rights. But we have a voice, and we're planning to create a voice. But the voice we're creating, and this is my personal opinion, if you choose as a country to adopt or to have children adopted to your country, have you considered the circumstances or the consequences that come out of that? Because we all live in a welfare society that everybody has to pay taxes, everybody has to be equal, everybody have the right to healthcare. But when it comes to an adoptee, it's always a problem. And to my personal opinion today, if you choose to have an adoptee adopted to your country, are you also willing to understand how important it is to support their identity, for which they have is a basic human right, that they should be entitled to trace the roots? Because I'm no more different to you or anybody else, and nobody should ever deny me the fact that I have the right to look for my identity.
I can totally relate, and we all live this. And the situation, for example, in the Netherlands, what we have seen is that there's now an adoption stop, which is only a very good thing, because it makes people to realize and go into other discussions and new discussions in order to, we have only recognized now that this situation that happened in Chile is something that is not only for Chile, but this is what we are looking for, what we do. And we are just quite young when it comes to the years that we're busy, but not when it comes to the years that we have been adopted. That is already since that we were really young. We also represent like 3 different stories: a girl that was already older, a baby that was declared dead, and a other baby that was stolen. And the mother came there, and the child was not there anymore. Came there with the brother, and the brother got silenced for 10 years. That was the damage. So you're affecting a lot of people when you want to create an offer for a certain demand that exists in Western civilization, when the people cannot have children of their own. And of course it is difficult for us to create this awareness, what Angelica was just talking about, but we have made a metaphor about it, or like something that I pushed into the world once. It's like we like little colibris, little hummingbirds. It's a typical thing in Chile to see hummingbirds, and for me, it's my personal favorite little birds. The smallest bird on this planet is a hummingbird, and lays eggs as big as 2 millimeters. Does not live in Chile, but in Chile you have a couple of these hummingbirds. So what I mentioned one time is like, it's like we are hummingbirds, like we as Chilean adoptees. And it's like we knocking, we ticking with our beaks on like a window, and no one hears us. And sometimes it could also be an iron steel door. We don't even know what's behind it. But let's keep on tapping. And now we're coming with 1,000 little hummingbirds, and now they're listening to us. And if you ask me, like, what is the idea of CAF? What is the idea of what I just said? Like, yeah, guilty, not only me, but we all are, is that CAF in a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, shouldn't even exist anymore.
Yes. Oh, Alejandro, that is so beautifully said, and such a, I think, a perfect way for us to begin to wrap things up, because I think the spark that you're lighting, the chispa, is becoming a fire. And these hummingbirds, that's such a beautiful thought, that I think when you're doing this kind of advocacy work, and I'm just starting to, you start to wonder, is there an impact? But you're right. It's like every voice makes all the other voices a little bit louder. So what we're trying to do on our platform is we want to connect around the world and just create this web of adoptee voices where people can no longer ignore the truth. They need to know.
Yeah, and it's like when I fell down 10 stories high, today there is this network that captures you before you fall and lose your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea.
Oh, beautiful, Alejandro. Well, I cannot thank you guys enough. I know you are busy. This is going to mean so much to our audience and the helping professionals, adoptees that are listening, adopted parents. They need to understand. Birth parents need to understand. So thank you so much to adding to the conversation. And Maria, also a special thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing a whole episode just on your story. I know it's not easy to walk back through the pain, but I think people need to understand the details so that they can appreciate what it is to be adopted. I thank you guys so much.
It's our pleasure.